Hey there, Brew Crew. Welcome back to Murder Most Brewed. Today we're stepping into the deep woods of Oregon, a place where the trees don't just whisper, they hold dark secrets. Secrets about a man who turned a quiet stretch of the wilderness into something much more sinister. This is the story of Dayton Leroy Rogers, the Molalla Forest serial killer. I don't know about you, but there's something about forests that's always felt a little alive to me. The way the branches move when there's no wind, the way the light disappears once you step off the trail. It's beautiful, but also terrifying. And for some, it's the perfect place to hide things they don't want found. Molalla Forest, about an hour outside of Portland, Oregon, is dense and remote. The kind of place where the roads turn into gravel without warning, where you can walk for miles and never see another person. Back in the 1980s, it was just another quiet place to camp, hike, or get lost for an afternoon. But after Dayton Leroy Rogers, it would be remembered for something else entirely. On the surface, Dayton Leroy Rogers looked normal. He ran a small business repairing power tools. He was married, he had a kid. If you saw him at the grocery store, you wouldn't look twice. But underneath, Rogers was hiding a darkness that had been building for years. He wasn't new to violence. He had a history, a record that stretched back years. Assaults on women, charges that somehow always seemed to slip through the cracks. Time and time again, he'd get caught doing something violent. And time again, he'd walk away with barely a scratch on his record. And that's the thing, right? How many warnings do we miss before something truly awful happens? By the mid-80s, Rogers had developed a pattern. He targeted women working the streets, sex workers who society, frankly, was quick to overlook. He'd approach them, friendly enough, offering them a ride, a drink, maybe a quick party. Vodka and orange juice, a little liquid courage, or maybe just enough to lower their guard. But Rogers didn't want a party. He wasn't looking for a good time. He was looking for victims. Once they agreed, he'd drive them, sometimes for miles, deep into the Molalla Forest. Imagine it. You're in a stranger's car, the city lights getting farther and farther behind you. The road narrows, the trees thicken. Eventually, there's no one else around. Out there, surrounded by nothing but trees and silence, Dayton Leroy Rogers revealed who he really was. He would assault, torture, and eventually murder his victims. Acts so brutal that even seasoned investigators struggled to talk about the crime scenes later. I try to picture what it must have felt like, that realization, that moment when you know you're completely alone and no one is coming to save you. But like most monsters, Rogers eventually slipped up. One of his final victims fought back. Badly injured but determined to survive, she managed to escape him, and in doing so, she led police straight to his doorstep. Once investigators had Rogers in custody, they started piecing together a horrifying picture. They found multiple bodies in Malala Forest, women who had been missing, their names barely mentioned in the papers, if at all. They weren't treated like missing daughters or sisters. They were treated like statistics, and maybe that's why Rogers thought he could get away with it. One by one, the forest gave up its secrets. Shallow graves, discarded evidence, remnants of lives taken too soon. The search crews would later say that walking through the forest felt heavy, like the place itself didn't want to give up what it was hiding. Rogers was eventually convicted and sentenced to death, but in Oregon, executions were rare, and a moratorium later put all death sentences on hold. He's still alive today, sitting on death row, silent, waiting. During his trial, people described him as almost detached, like he didn't really grasp or care about what he had done. Or maybe he just didn't think his victims were worth caring about. It's easy to look at these cases and only see numbers, right? But let's take a moment and think about the women whose lives were stolen. Imagine them before they were lost in the forest, before their stories were swallowed up by the shadows of Malala Forest. Let's talk about Lisa Marie Mock. She was just 23 years old. She had dreams and hopes that were left unfulfilled. Lisa was known to be outgoing, with a laugh that could light up a room. She was more than just a woman on the streets. She was a daughter, a person who deserved better. Then there's Riatha Giles, only 16. She had her whole life ahead of her, a teenager who could have been anyone. She was still figuring out the world, trying to carve out her place in it. But out there, in the woods, she never had the chance to grow up. Her voice was silenced too soon. Both Lisa and Riatha were just young women with lives that mattered. They were more than statistics, more than just names lost in a forest. They were someone's sister, daughter, friend. They didn't deserve to be out there, alone, with no one to protect them. Imagine the fear, the desperation in their eyes, knowing they were being lured into a trap. Imagine the terror of realizing there could be no one to save them. Just the sound of the forest, the quiet that comes when you realize you're alone. They weren't just statistics. They were women with stories, with lives that mattered. And their stories are still with us if we listen closely enough. Because even if the world forgot them, the forest didn't, and neither should we. Thanks for listening to this episode of Murder Most Brewed. If today's story left you looking over your shoulder, well, you're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves the darker side of history. And the next time you step into the woods, listen carefully. You never know what the forest is trying to tell you.